Welcome back to another sci-fi episode where psychology and finances collide. We'll continue to examine how we think, feel, and behave with money as it relates to chronic financial pain. Welcome back to the Chronic Financial Pain Management Clinic, where today we're going to be talking about cognitive restructuring and cognitive defusion, a fancy way of challenging your beliefs that are holding you back from achieving your financial goals or that are increasing your financial pain. So, cognitive restructuring is an evidence-based practice that uses so many different theoretical orientations over time, including Beck, Piaget, and others, as well as ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. You've probably heard of cognitive behavioral therapy and other cognitive forms of therapy. So what it does is it disrupts pain. And because it disrupts pain, it disrupts that avoidance cycle that continues to turn and turn as a result of the pain. It also decreases pain intensity and decreases suffering. It improves our physical and emotional functioning, decreases emotional distress, and increases self-efficacy. This is what they found in chronic pain patients, but this can also be found in several different forms of counseling, whether you're receiving counseling on managing pain or receiving financial counseling. Cognitive restructuring has that evidence-based, continuous, research-backed approach to providing all of these things. What it does is it helps you identify maladaptive beliefs. And in this situation, we're identifying maladaptive beliefs about money. Now, in episodes 9 and 10 in season 3, which was year 2024, I've already provided a couple episodes on challenging your financial beliefs because they, after all, could be holding you back from achieving your financial goals. In this episode, I'm going to focus more on how this can help with your chronic financial pain. So maybe you've been living from paycheck to paycheck. It's likely there are thoughts that have gone unchallenged, beliefs about the world, your income, and even yourself that keep you from doing something different. If you're drowning in debt, there's likely unchallenged thoughts about lenders, creditors, larger financial institutions, repayment, etc. So less about what you think about yourself and more about how you feel about larger corporations and the world at large. All of these things are contributing to mental captivity. And these behaviors don't just happen. They are driven by what we think and feel, either reducing or increasing financial pain. The goal is not to think positively, but to think flexibly and compassionately. It's fitting to share one of the most distorted thoughts associated with physical pain is this: movement will further damage me. Walking will damage me. Doing the simplest things that my physical therapist has shown me to do will harm me. It's that overarching thought: movement will further damage me. So it's the same with financial clients. This is what I hear. I hear the same thing. If I do this, it's going to cause further financial harm. So instead of engaging in that movement towards doing something different financially, they seize up and do nothing. Let's go back to physical pain. A physical therapist will assure you over and over, and I've had my fair share of physical therapy in my lifetime, and I will attest to just how powerful physical therapy can be. But they will tell you over and over that the pain associated with the therapy and their intervention is normal, to be expected, and even instrumental in muscle building and decreasing inflammation. So, in many ways, you feel for these pain patients because why wouldn't we think that movement would cause more damage? After all, we've been told all our lives if you experience shortness of breath or pain to stop whatever you're doing immediately. We see these stickers all over the gym equipment telling us the same thing. But these physical therapists are very aware of this belief system and that belief system which causes us to seize up and do nothing. And I actually remember that distorted thought laced with fear when the physical therapist I was working with put me on a bike after my back surgery. And compassionately, he provided education and reassurance. It would not undo all the healing. It was just like this weird thought that I had that, I've been doing so well with physical therapy. There's just something about sitting on that bike that makes me think this is not going to be well. This is not going to do any good. And if anything, it's going to cause me to go through this whole thing again. So, what was even more strange in that moment was that I was simultaneously looking forward to getting the cardio, but I was so gripped by that fear and I wanted to try it. And I was so excited to try it, but I was so scared. And thankfully, because obviously these are professionals and are very familiar with this distorted thinking, just basically provided education and reassurance. And that's all my brain needed was to get out of that emotional mind and back into logical and reasoning mind so that I would engage in something that would be helpful. And when I started pedaling, I did not feel any pain. But even if I did, it doesn't mean that I would have had to stop. But I thought, wow, I'm glad I trusted you. So that's what financial counselors do as well. We know that you are going to come to us with a level of distorted thinking, and our job is to compassionately meet you where you are and assure you over and over that the pain associated with rearranging the spend plan and paying down debt is normal, to be expected, and even instrumental, especially the discomfort, to modifying future spending behaviors. This goes hand in hand with graded exposure. That's what physical therapists use to help tackle the least fearful exercise, helps you engage in those things before steadily increasing to the most feared exercise. So going from walking to running. And psychotherapists and counselors call it gradual exposure. And that's what I do prior to every appointment. I have all my clients go through this gradual exposure exercise before they even set foot in my office. And it's simply compiling the numbers. I have them create or complete a cash flow analysis, and that causes them to move toward the very thing that they've been avoiding all this time. And a lot of them, before our appointment, they'll email me the cash flow and say, wow, this has already been therapeutic. And I can understand that and attest to the power of exposure. So let's talk a little bit about your core. After all, this is what physical therapists are helping you to stabilize. It's what builds your muscles that support your spine, that impacts every other part of your body. And in chronic financial pain, counselors are working to stabilize your core beliefs, which also impact every other part of your financial world and beyond. Let's talk a little bit about a schema, just to kind of give you some groundwork on this cognitive restructuring we'll be talking about. A schema or a cognitive schema, well, let's talk a little bit about a schema. A framework or structure of thoughts. They are abstractions that simplify a person's world based on assumptions the person has of themselves, others, and the world. These structures, outlooks, assumptions, and abstractions are so deep rooted in perception that they endure despite objective reality. They serve as guides and shortcuts to make quick decisions. Our brains are multitaskers, so it's good for us to have a quick reference guide, especially when we need to make quick, reflexive, life preserving decisions. But in other situations, we may rely too much on impulse and not challenge that cognitive schema. And not all schemas require challenging. But financial counselors, it's our role to help you identify those schemas or core beliefs that are impacting you financially. And psychologists have defined schemas as structures that integrate meaning into events, cognitive structures that organize experience and behavior, mental filters that guide the processing of information, and other things about yourself, like your beliefs about yourself. For example, in the financial world, it might look something like, I am a financial failure. I am financially helpless. I am defective. I am unlovable. And what people do with these thoughts is they make things feel like facts that aren't facts. Let's take a look at what that might look like. All or nothing thinking. The pain that it creates, the pain is in trying to stick to a budget, but overspending in one category. And this all or nothing thinking, what it looks like, which creates the struggle, is I've completely failed at budgeting. It's pointless to even try. And this thought leads to giving up on financial goals altogether, even after a minor setback. I find that quite sad. And then there's overgeneralization. The pain is being denied for a loan. And with the thought, you create the struggle by saying to yourself, this always happens to me. I'll never get ahead financially. I'm just not good with money. And that thought creates a narrative of perpetual failure. And my goal as a financial counselor is to help change the narrative to create perpetual hope. And then there's mind reading. Here's the pain. Friends are going on a vacation you can't afford. And with your thinking, you create a struggle. They probably think I'm a failure because I can't afford to go. They're judging my financial situation. So yeah, this thought leads to social withdrawal and shame, even when there is no evidence to support that they're judging you. And then you have should statements. The pain is you're comparing your financial situation to others. And you create the struggle by thinking, I should be earning more at my age. I should have a bigger house by now. Well, that thought leads to feelings of guilt, shame, and inadequacy. Then you have emotional reasoning. And the pain that you're feeling is you're looking at a large credit card balance. And your thinking creates another struggle for yourself. I feel so overwhelmed and hopeless. So my financial situation must be hopeless. So this kind of thought allows feelings to dictate your perception of reality, even if there are steps that could be taken to improve the situation. And then there's personalization. This is probably one I hear most from teenagers. Here's the pain. A company-wide layoff affects your job. The struggle that you create with your thinking is this. It's all my fault. If I had worked harder or been better at my job, this wouldn't have happened. So that kind of thinking involves taking blame for events that are outside of your control. So you can see with those examples how we take a pain and turn it into a struggle and increase our suffering. And you might even pepper in some conditional assumptions. If I just made more money, then I'd be happier. If I could just buy a house, then I'd be financially secure. Or since I'm already in debt $50,000, what's another $50,000? Here's a neat statistic that I got out of this continuing education. It's not really a stat, it's more of a number that the University of Iowa found. The average person has 60,000 automatic thoughts per day. And even when we sleep, we don't stop processing. No wonder our thoughts are perpetuating chronic financial pain. It's one thing to think this way, It's another to act on them. I wanted to give you kind of an emotional word picture or a modern image of what a schema is. There's all a buzz about artificial intelligence, and AI is basically built on a network of schemas. It is a structured data blueprint or a set of structured data blueprints. So think of your brain as the AI platform, and the event is the prompt. Because you know what they say in this AI training, what you receive from AI is only as good as your prompt. And that platform is usually set to quick result. If you've never used AI, you may not understand what I'm talking about, but when you put in the prompt for it to give you information, you can choose whether you want to have it on quick result or auto, and it will, if it's on auto, it'll choose whether it does the quick result or a deeper thinking setting or a research setting. So it takes a little more time to give you the information, but they spend a little more, or I shouldn't say they, but AI spends a little more time looking for other information within that schema to present you the information. So your schema is a result of that prompt. So, what are the odds that the result or schema provided some factual information and some incorrect information, just as AI does, right? AI even experiences hallucinations, and that's exactly what our brain can do to us with our faulty thinking if we are not challenging our core beliefs. Sometimes we need to think about our schemas like AI. We need to look at whether this is reliable information and also remind ourselves that just like AI, our schemas are only as reliable as the data that we're feeding it. So, what we are telling ourselves is how we're going to behave. So, those thoughts impact our feelings, which impact ultimately our behaviors. That schema structure is gradually reinforced and made stronger over time with repeated data. We know that we could have some schemas that sound like this: I am financially helpless, or I am broke. And right back to the metaphor or analogy with physical pain, physical chronic pain patients will say things like, I am broken. Whereas your chronic financial pain clients are going to say things like, I am broke. So the language we choose to use is critical in retrieving the closest to the truth result. Language is a powerful piece of the structure within that schema. Saying things like, I will always be financially helpless, or I will always be broken, again, are going to just continue to spit out that bad data. So, cognitive restructuring is simply challenging the data, talking back to the platform, changing that button from automatic, quick response to deep think or research mode. Let me take a little more time to think about this, and maybe even introducing new data. So now you have new prompts and new language that can guide you. So you got to think of using your schemas responsibly, just as we're cautioning folks to use AI responsibly. Here are some schema examples of others. We talked a little bit about what we think about ourselves. I am a financial failure. I am financially helpless. And then here's some schema examples of how we might think about others. High income earners can be financially well. Banks are untrustworthy. Investors are evil. The rich only get rich by hurting others. Tax preparers are untrustworthy. Rich people are greedy and don't pay their fair share. Creditors and lenders keep me from moving forward. So you can have good schema or schemas of others, and some you can say, wow, I wonder what would happen if I actually challenged that and truly looked into what I was thinking is, and a lot of times the schemas that we have of others are definitely going to drive our behavior with how we deal with them, how we approach them, and how we treat them. So no wonder a lot of people will rack up credit card debt and never pay it, or go through a debt settlement process and have no shame or no guilt whatsoever by only paying 30%. And I'm not, or 40%, but I'm not blaming or judging people who ultimately choose to do that. I know that some folks do that as a result of divorce or other things that were outside of their control. But I'm talking about the schemas that drive behaviors where you knowingly go into a credit courtship knowing that you're not going to pay this back. Here are some schema examples of the world. The world is a lost cause. The world is dangerous. The world is boring. The world is scary. These kind of schemas can create more suffering in the process of self-change, because if we're thinking, well, because I can't change the world at all, what's the point in changing myself? It's definitely something that you could work for. No one can stop feelings, but you can challenge the thinking to alter your feelings and therefore alter your behaviors. And a lot of times you cannot stop the thoughts that pop into your head either, but you can challenge the thoughts that pop into your head, which can alter the feelings and therefore alter your behaviors. And remember, the more compelling the schema, the stronger the schema, and the more resistant it is to change. It doesn't mean that it's a lost cause or hopeless, but if you're experiencing the same behavior over and over again, overspending every single month, you probably have a strong, compelling schema that is resistant to change. But it doesn't mean it can't be changed. You can treat the schema by feeding it new data and information, just like you would that AI platform, to generate more factual information. Then all of the products of the schema improve gradually, not just that one part. And so even within chronic pain clinics, they use what they call the schema modification protocol. And the same could be done with chronic financial pain clients. You just, one, identify the maladaptive schema. And many times this is rooted in scarcity and pessimism. So, for example, I will always live paycheck to paycheck. That is rooted in scarcity and pessimism. And it also lowers your expectation. So, pain is less intense, but it simultaneously prevents hope because you are not risking hope by saying that or telling yourself that or thinking that. Number two, you identify the adaptive schema. So instead of saying, I will always live paycheck to paycheck, you can identify that adaptive schema somewhere within you. Hey, my financial situation is constrained in this moment, but it's not fixed. I can influence parts over time, even if it's slow. So that's a more adaptive schema. And you're also showing yourself a little compassion as well. And then number three, you rate the believability of each of those schemas. What percentage of you believes that you will always live paycheck to paycheck? And what percentage of yourself believes that you won't always live paycheck to paycheck? That could provide some discussion within yourself and even challenge that thinking to where your schema slowly starts to crumble as you are asking yourself those questions. And then you can rate the believability of these schemas at regular intervals, which I think is always an interesting practice. If the AI analogy isn't resonating with you about what a schema is, consider Harry Potter or Stranger Things. If you don't like either, consider watching Inside Out. Her cognitive islands or schemas fueled her animated emotions, which also fueled her behavior. And when she grieved her old neighborhood as a result of moving, her schemas began to crumble. And you'll see that in the movie, and her parents barely recognized her. So that's a great visualization. But back to Harry Potter and Stranger Things. With Harry Potter, they have Defense Against the Dark Arts, where the professors taught the students to envision how they would counter their worst fears or anxieties while they were feeling well, while they were feeling safe, while they were feeling secure before the battle. And it really is an intervention against darkness. And that's the same thing. That's how we can view our schemas. Are these schemas moving us towards financial light or financial darkness? And it's the same thing with Stranger Things. You can wear the proverbial headphones like Max to find your way out of the schema or Vecna's mind. What thought patterns or new schemas or old schemas will pull you out of that darkness? All of the above are examples of cognitive restructuring. But there's also another method to approaching those thoughts or beliefs that perpetuate chronic pain, whether physical or financial, and that is cognitive defusion. So let's say, Olivia, I've tried cognitive restructuring and never really got it. This is a different modality that you might enjoy. It's taken from acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a third wave cognitive behavioral therapy approach that incorporates mindfulness. And ACT, short for acceptance and commitment therapy, believes that while pain hurts, it is the struggle with pain that causes suffering. We've already talked about that. So that's where that sentence comes from. And it is also an evidence based approach to treating chronic pain. It improved psychological flexibility. And that's what we're doing with restructuring our schemas or challenging our thinking is we become more, it's not that we're thinking more positively, it's that we're thinking more flexibly. And as a result of thinking more flexibly, then we are improving our psychological symptoms, which also decreases emotional distress, enhances functioning, and improved quality of life. So, again, just another example of how these two work together. So, just a little bit about acceptance and commitment therapy. The whole thing is about increasing psychological flexibility. So, acceptance is the willingness to experience difficult thoughts. So, as an individual, a client with chronic financial pain, you know what? It is hard living from paycheck to paycheck. I am experiencing this. It's a difficult thought that I have, but this is a reality as well. And here's some thoughts that are perpetuating it. And then you move towards cognitive diffusion, where you observe those thoughts without being ruled by the thoughts. And then you're learning how to be present and focusing on the here and now. What can I do today to improve? What one small thing can I do to improve my financial situation today in the present? And then how you're viewing yourself as context, noticing your thoughts. And then your values, discovering what is really important to you. Because listen, some of these financial core beliefs are others' financial core beliefs that were pushed upon you. And I've actually sat with several clients who, when they come to that realization in session, wow, this is not even within my value system. I don't even know why I want this. I really don't want more income. I don't want more hours at work. I don't want more responsibility at work. What I really want is just to live under the radar and just enjoy waking up, having some sense of purpose, maybe a part-time job, and then just enjoying life, enjoying the grandkids, or moving towards retirement, maybe at a slower pace, but knowing that I am inching that way with a higher quality of life. So that's what we talk about with examining those values. And then it's also commitment, taking action to pursue the important things, not the things that others have pressed upon you, but the things that are important to you. As you approach these difficult thoughts, maybe, for example, one of them is, we've already talked about I am broken or I am broke. That's a scarcity mindset where you have this impoverished mentality versus an abundance mindset where there's enough to go around and there's not an exact number that I have to meet to be happy. The other thought that folks who are working with chronic pain patients, they work with this thought with cognitive diffusion. If I can't do it the way I used to, then all this work isn't worth it. Some of the diffusion techniques are labeling the thoughts as thoughts, reframing negative thoughts playfully, using metaphors to create distance, externalizing the thoughts, noticing and naming thought patterns, which all of these methods address pain, anxiety, stress, fear of flare-ups, depression, substance abuse. And it helps you to see a mental event, not a fact. The way that you were thinking is truly just a mental event. I'm having the thought that blank. Oh, here we are again, the I'm a burden thought again. Or, oh, that's Gertrude talking, not me. Or that's Vecna talking, not me. So it provides all these different ways of challenging thinking without necessarily restructuring your thinking. Just words and images in your mind is what they are teaching you within ACT and within cognitive fusion, rather than objective truths or commands that you must obey. Again, back to that Vecna image. Yeah, it's like he's so arrogant to believe that you have to do everything he says. The goal here isn't to change the thought or to argue with it, but to change your relationship to the thought. In the realm of chronic pain, the thought, I am broken, as we've discussed, is one of the most powerful and painful in the realm of financial suffering because it's not just a statement about a situation, it's a statement of identity. The thought, I am broke, in the realm of financial suffering, because it's not just a statement about a situation, again, it's a statement of identity. When a thought fuses with your sense of self, I am blank, it becomes incredibly sticky and hard to see objectively. And by the way, if you find this very helpful for yourself, a way to use this with kids is you don't use terms like cognitive restructuring or cognitive diffusion. I learned this from a neat little event I took my then 9-year-old to, where they called them sticky thoughts or sticky feelings, things that you just can't seem to shake that just are bothering you. And I thought, wow, that is a cute, childlike way to think about, gosh, what is keeping me from moving forward and doing what I know is going to be helpful? The goal of diffusion here is to pry the I away from the label broke and see the thought for what it is, a string of words your mind is producing. And so here's some other cognitive diffusion techniques that help you move away from the thought, I am broke. So, first, here's the process. Well, the technique is to label the thought. The process is, instead of thinking, I am broke, consciously rephrase it in your mind. I am having the thought that I am broke. You can also say, I am noticing the thought, I am broke. And when the thought I am broke appears, respond internally, or excuse me, let me go to finish this example. When you're noticing the thought I am broke is showing up, you can create a space between you as the observer and the thought, what is being observed. You are not the thought. You are the one experiencing the thought. It changes the statement from a fact about your identity to an observation of a mental event. When the thought, I am broke, appears, respond internally with something like, thank you, mind, for that thought. I know you're trying to keep me safe by flagging a potential threat. It really gives you a different feeling when you say that out loud. And this technique treats your mind as a separate, well-intentioned, if sometimes over-anxious entity. It neutralizes the adversarial energy. You're not fighting the thought, you're acknowledging it calmly, which allows it to pass without hooking into you. Another thing that I think is so fun is singing the words, I am broke, to the tune of a nursery rhyme like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or any other favorite song that you might have. And say, or you could even say the words out loud repeatedly for 30 seconds until it just becomes meaningless. And you can also say it in a silly cartoon voice, or even say it in Vecna's voice. It's just brings a level of silliness. This strips the thought of its power and seriousness. And when you turn a solemn pronouncement into a ridiculous song, its emotional weight truly evaporates. It reveals the thought as just a collection of sounds, not an unchangeable truth about you. And then you could physicalize the thought. You can write, I am broke, on a small piece of paper, hold it in your hand, look at it, read the words, and then place the paper on the table in front of you. This helps you externalize the thought, turning it from an internal part of you into a separate external object. You can see that you are here and the thought is over there. You are the one who can observe the paper. You are not the ink on the paper. And this creates both a physical and psychological distance. And then you could also acknowledge the story. You label the thought as a recurring story your mind tells. You could say, the I am broke story is playing again. I know this one. This frames the thought not as a real-time assessment, but as a pre-recorded narrative. And just like hearing a familiar but sad song on the radio, you can recognize it without having to let it dictate your entire mood or your next actions. So what happens next? So the thought might still be there, and this happens quite often, but it has less of a grip. And you're starting to feel more hopeful and expectant that something different is happening. The feeling of dread might lessen, even if just a little. And in that space you've created, you now have a choice. You are no longer fused with the identity of being broke. You are a person experiencing financial strain who can still take the next committed action, whether that's planning your grocery list carefully, exploring a side hustle, or simply taking a deep breath and focusing on the present moment. You don't need to eliminate the thought to move forward. You just need to unhook from it. I like to call it a conscious uncoupling. I can't remember the actress that she called that divorce, a conscious uncoupling. I am consciously uncoupling or divorcing from this thought that I am broke. We have spoken at length about how to diffuse several of these cognitive distortions or cognitive core beliefs that are holding you back from doing something different with your finances. And I hope you return for the next chronic financial pain management clinic as we start addressing mindfulness and some other techniques that are also used in the chronic pain clinics at large. That also includes activity pacing and behavioral activation. What can you finally do to move towards that financial freedom or security that you're seeking? And remember to rate and review wherever you listen on the pod.